Hello, Tony Novak here, recording from my rural home office in Money Island, New Jersey, and taking a step backwards from my series on specific tax problems. I usually tend to share a story, but today, which is the day after the tax filing deadline, I'm taking a step back to take a broad brush view of the four major categories of tax problems, and the purpose is just to help orient our thinking. We can be facing any one of them or multiple ones at one time, and it's important to see the distinction and understand the process difference for each of them if we're affected by them. And I'll try to give an example of a recent case that I've worked on in each category. So the first category is of course income taxes. We mentioned IRS a minute ago. The income tax filing deadline with the federal government, the IRS, was yesterday, and because those taxes tend to be the largest for many people, those are the ones we pay the most attention to. For most people, however, those taxes are handled through our payroll system, and if the payroll system is adjusted properly, we don't have to worry about it. I recommend that everyone check their payroll tax withholdings, especially if there's anything going on unusual in your life. If you're just married or just separated or had a child or doing a lot of overtime or had a raise, any of these things that may affect your wages and your tax withholdings are call for a check. You can do it on your own. There are worksheets online, or you can work with someone like me that can help step through that. The biggest problem area for income taxes by far in my exposure in my world is self-employed people, particularly during startups and particularly, unfortunately, during a pandemic. I've lost track of how many people made it through the pandemic, kept their business alive, so kudos for that, but didn't set aside any amount for taxes, and I filed a number of Schedule C, which is self-employed persons tax return with significant taxes due without making a payment or a payment arrangement. That's a problem, and life is going to be tough. We'll have to continue to work through each of those situations that just have become an after effect of this pandemic, and so there's a real current example that many self-employed people are facing right now. So the second category of tax problems has to do with transactional taxes. And again, for the most part, we're talking about people in business. And for the most part, when I say transactional, I'm talking about sales taxes. And anyone who is in business pretty much is aware of the hassles and the harassment, if you don't do it correctly, of collecting and remitting sales taxes. One recent example, just yesterday, I heard of a retailer, basically a closed retailer, that had a knock on the door for failure to properly set up and collect taxes. The reality is there's no taxes due, but that doesn't keep the state revenue agents from aggressively pursuing those accounts. So while the dollar amounts tend not to be as large, the collection actions are, and so it's not uncommon to see state transaction-based accounts, not only sales but other transaction-based tax problems. The third category, again, also increasingly common, is comes from local and county government, and that's real estate taxes that finance local purposes in schools. And we've seen a huge increase in people who are behind on their mortgage, behind on their tax payments, and while there may or may not be relief for mortgage payments and delinquencies, in general, what I'm seeing is there's not relief for tax delinquencies. I do expect to see a big increase locally in tax lien sales at the end of this year, and the only good solution, I think, is to speak with someone who is not connected to the property and doesn't have a emotional stake in the family or outcome. And many of these are family issues, multiple persons involved, but there is often a solution, but we need to start early, look around, and see what's possible. So that's the third type of tax problem that we see. And the fourth, the least common, that is estate tax problem. And we primarily see that. The last one I saw was a few years ago, and it related to a farm. And where farm was the only asset, and if the estate tax is not dealt with prior to death of the owner, in other words, if there's not a financial planner, an accountant, and a lawyer working together to figure out how to manage that account, generally it falls on the heirs, and there's generally some squabbling and tough times to get by that, and that was the case here. The main issue with estate tax planning is, I would say, it's a number of times I'm asked about it for people that it does not apply to. So it's easy to pick up Forbes magazine and come to the conclusion that I need to worry about estate taxes, but in most cases, again, I've only had a handful of clients that have had to worry about it under current state tax limits. So those are the four types of estate taxes. If four types of tax problems. If you're worried about any one of those, I'd be happy to have a chat. No obligation, just to hear what's going on in your life. I'm easy to reach online at TonyNovak.com. There is a big blue box that says Let's Talk, and we can set a time to chat. And I look forward to hearing what's going on in your life. Thanks.